guys know how much I love laughing at Pyrrhic victories. And women have been patting themselves on the back for winning the gender war, the war between the sexes, never realizing that the men just let them have it because they walked away and found something else. It looks like they're not really all that happy anymore. I wonder why. Maybe TFM was right all along, huh? Women's have won the war between the sexes, but at what cost? Current trends portend not a feminazi paradise, but a dysfunctional society where men and women are increasingly indifferent or at odds with each other. Exactly like we were warning you. We told you this would happen, and it did. And we're not going to get any credit for it, are we? We were all just guessing, guys. You just happened to guess correctly. Don't get a big head. Yeah, I know, right? My pattern recognition is just guessing. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine, man. So the war between the sexes has ended, and rather than a cooperative future that could benefit all, is that what happens after a war? Like two sides beat the crap out of each other, and then they just hug and shake hands. Nah, one side's always at least if it was a proper war, one side would be pretty bitter that they lost. It would take generations to get over that. If you look at the Middle East, they're still holding on to grudges that are thousands of years old sometimes. It has turned out to be more like a lopsided win for the female side. After millennia of power struggles based on things such as biology and social function, the role of women in advanced societies has expanded dramatically, which is generally a good thing, but has some rarely cited downsides. Oh, like the fact that women still refuse to date down. So while they're replacing all the men in higher up positions, then they complain that there's no men in positions higher than theirs that want them. The crux of the problem lies in the fact that as women rise, men seem to be falling. You think? Now, this limits opportunities to establish stable families or even find decent partners. The Brookings Institute's Richard Reeves has found that as much as 1/3 of the decline in marriage rates is driven by inability of women to find mates that seem stable, smart, good earners, or otherwise up to their standards. You're literally admitting that the problem is women's fault. They have unrealistic standards given the situation they created, and thus it's men's fault. I'm sure this is somehow men's fault. So let's just look at this logically. So did women think that as they advance, men would advance in lockstep with them and stay ahead of them? If that happened, they'd be complaining about that too. Oh, yeah, we made a lot of progress, but these evil men are still ahead. We're going to have to do something about this. So instead, they pulled ahead of men, and now they're complaining. Like, where's all the men? I need a man better than me, but I pulled ahead of everyone. Yeah, so like if this was a race, women pulled into first place. And now they're mad because they were relying on someone ahead of them to pull them, to help them. But no, now that they're in first place, they're pulling everyone else. Welcome to the life of a man. I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, men, on the other hand, they have been enjoying it. Like, you know what? You can take that soulless job and work yourself into an early grave. I don't care. I'm just going to work these easy part-time jobs, making only enough to support my hobbies. I don't need any more than that. Yeah, I think men came out on top here. The gap between the sexes is driven in large part by shifting rates of indoctrinational achievement. In the U.S., women's now collect nearly 60% of bachelor's degrees. In Canada, they have accounted for the most university graduates for at least a decade. To be sure, a long-standing pay gap between men and women still exists. The same one that's been debunked over and over and over again. Yeah, I'm sure it does. Yeah, but women's are making progress towards the top echelon in Canada as well as in the U.S. Or women started a majority of all new firms in the U.S. in current year -3 and -2. I wonder why they did that. It's almost as if there was some initiatives to encourage them and specifically help them out and give them free money for doing so, while withholding that same amount of help from men. Men still earn more, but among young adults aged 20 to 24, the income gap has narrowed to just $43 a week. Well, this is a result of like while women are basically becoming men and getting those go-getter high-paying jobs, men are actually dropping out and realizing, you know what? I just realized I don't need this much money. I only needed this much money when I was still pursuing women, but now that I see what's out there, what's available, whatever. I think I'm gonna go full like Japanese style herbivore, man. I don't need this in my life. And they're realizing that for a single man, you don't need that much money. Most of the stuff that men end up blowing a lot of money on is stuff to impress women. The biggest divide may be found among the working class. Many workers, especially those with jobs tied to physical labor, have faced extreme pressures from both foreign competition and regulatory restraints. At least they're finally admitting to the regulation being a problem. Yeah, today, according to demographer Nicholas Eberstadt, the employment rates among men are at Depression era levels, as Reeves notes. Men are increasingly left behind, plagued by psychological disorders and a lack of friends, and remain outside the economy. Not all of them are bad and in need of help, though. A lot of them do it by choice. But that's something a lot of these people never even want to consider because they'd never make that choice. So they just assume no one else would either. And some feminazis may celebrate this decline, but it does not bode well for women's, at least outside the job market. Congratulations, women. You've become men. Your entire existence is now working that soul-sucking job. You got nothing to look forward to when you get home. That's what you wanted. That's how you liking that male privilege. Now, in many areas, such as self-harm and depression, teen girls generally suffer more than men, according to psychologist Jonathan Haidt, while the percentage who have contemplated self-minecrafting has surged. So these trends are trends seen not just in the U.S., but other Western countries, including Canada. Hey, Canada encourages that nowadays. More importantly, the divide blocks the path to family life. In the past, the choice was often between a husband's career and that of his spouses. Now, with so many men on the sidelines, more women have no choice but to fend for themselves. It's what you wanted. Quit bitching. You literally fought for this. You pushed men out. You took their place. And now you're complaining that you have to fend for yourself like a man? I don't want to hear it. This is entirely self-inflicted. This situation is particularly intense for some minority communities, notably African Americans, where the gap between male and female achievement is profound, both Eberstadt and Reeves pointed out. The virtues of marriage are often diminished, but remain critical to better physical and mental health for women, according to a recent Harvard study. How the hell were they able to sneak that one past Harvard? The current mental health challenges faced by women seems particularly acute among regressives who are far less likely to be married, have children, or attend church, all traditional sources of comfort. They're more miserable than ever, and they did it to themselves. No sympathy. It's also clear that it's also clearly better for children to have fathers on hand. Closeness with fathers, noted author Jennifer Brandy Wallace, according to recent studies, translates to less anxiety, weight concern, and fewer depression symptoms for boys and girls. The growing male-female divide can also be seen in terms of sexual activity. Today's tech-savvy children clearly have problems relating to the opposite sex, a phenomenon traceable in part to their immersion in social media and easy access to internet porn. Okay, of course they're going to blame the porn, but at least they correctly included social media in this now. In the US, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Japan, China, and Airstrip 1, younger people are experiencing a sex recession, where a share of sexually active Americans stands at a 30-year low. Around 30% of young men reported in current year -4 that they had no sex in the past year, compared to around 20% of young women's. Now, what I find funny about this is just a symptom of first world society as well. If you got so many other options, like so many other things to do with your time, there's other things to do. Now, if you were living in the middle of a desert in a grass hut with nothing else to do, but both you and the wife were sitting there just wondering how are we going to pass the time, the answer is obvious, right? But when you each have other things you'd rather be doing, well, let's just say some other options get some more attention. That'd be a better way of putting it. I think so. And if the current trends continue, as many as 1 in 4 Whammons will be childless in the near future, according to analyst Lyman Stone. Hey, that's their choice. Many, he notes, will approach retirement age with no immediate family. So married Whammons tend to be to do far better professionally and economically, notes Brookings. Single parent households finds do far worse. I love how they say single parent households, whereas all the ones I've seen where they actually separate out single fathers from single mothers, they actually do okay. But they have to lump them both in together, though, in order for it to be politically acceptable, because you can't talk bad about single mothers, don't you know? So the growth of large class of indoctrinated but financially challenged young Whammons as well as men could shape our political future. American Whammons, particularly single Whammons, are the real base of the Democratic Party. So yeah, you want to know who to blame for all this BS? Now you know. Single Whammons. Same can be seen in Canada, where, according to a current year -3 poll, Whammons favored Liberals 2-1, while men slightly tilted to the Conservatives. Issues like abortion in particular drives these divergences further. Well, abortion may not be as much of an issue anymore if everyone's not having sex anymore, right? I guess there's a positive there. Without traditional focus on wealth creation by families, married people account for 3/4 of all homeowners in the U.S. There's a natural tendency to support greater government in forms of things like rent subsidies or direct transfers. That's right. And this is why when the country was initially founded, you had to be like a landowning taxpayer to vote, because they knew this would happen. So the pitch of Democratic presidents, as reflected by former U.S. President Obama's Life of Julia and President Brandon's Life of Linda, is geared towards Whammons who never marry. So the occasional child rearing addressed not by family resources, but government transfers. So these ideas reflect the increasing domination of indoctrination by female teachers who tend to be far more left-leaning and prone to cancel culture than their male counterparts. Yeah, meanwhile, if you're a man and you show interests with working with children, you just get branded as a pedophile. Honestly, I think that if you're a man in current year and you're a teacher, oh, dude, that takes guts. It does. Takes a lot of guts to do that, knowing that you're one false accusation away from your entire life being destroyed, and yet you still continue. So the sexual dynamic is transforming the regressive policy agenda, where once social democrats fought for strong families, the regressive left has become increasingly indifferent, even hostile to such things as parental rights. Well, because they're not the ones having kids. They don't want parental rights because they want access to other people's kids. Other people's kids. They're not having their own. So it's not parental rights, it's community rights. That's all that matters. Yeah, your kids are communal property. That's what they want. So there's a boom in such things as queer studies, sometimes with an agenda to replace the nuclear family with some form of collectivized child rearing. See, they don't care because they're not the ones having the kids. Or if they do have their kids, they don't really feel anything for them. They just view them as a burden to dump off on someone else. Now, this is what happens. The groups like Burn, Loot, Murder made opposition to a nuclear family part of its platform, even though family breakdown has hurt African-American boys most of all. The current transformer fixation also can be seen as hurting Whammons, such as allowing clearly biological males to compete against them in sports, even in the face of protests by athletes and some prominent feminazis. Hey, if anyone cared about protecting male spaces, I'd have a bit more shits to give about women's spaces. But as it is, no. No, man, if men aren't allowed to have spaces, women aren't either. It's only fair. Yeah, over time, these shifts will also likely accelerate an already dramatic decline in birth rates, something currently evident in countries like Japan and South Korea, where male-female relationships appear to be notably abysmal. Birth rates have been declining for years in America, while Canada's fertility rate hit a record low of 1.4 children per Whammons in current year -3. In Canada, the dependency ratio, the ratio of people over 65 to those between 15 and 60 and 64, is projected to increase by over 20% in the next 20 years. And I think those in charge now, they know all this already, but they just don't care because it's not going to be their problem, right? So ultimately, this suggests a very dystopian future where only the elderly population grows while children and families become rarer and more stressed. This portends not a feminazi paradise, but a dysfunctional society where men and women are increasingly indifferent towards or at odds with each other. The very magic that has driven society, albeit often in flawed ways, essentials such as romantic love, companionship, and family are being lost, which is not good for society or both sexes, which I agree with, but what are you going to do about it? Like it's the same thing when women bring up these points, like, oh, okay, so what rights that feminazism got you that aren't deserved are you willing to give up to make things right? And they'll all say the same thing. Oh, no, I'm not willing to give anything up. I just think it's gone far enough. I just think we can stop here. That's all. And then you try to tell them, it's like, no, the reason things are so bad is because it's gone too far. We need to go back. You need to give something up, you know? Like these relationships are supposed to be give and take, but you've been doing just nothing but take. So now it's time for you to give something. And then they just take the mask off, like misogyny. Okay. I can wait another generation or two. Can you? Nah, I doubt it. It'll be fun to watch, though. Yeah, other than the men that are still pining for what they can't have anymore, the men that accept the world for what it is now, I think they're doing better than ever. Like they're happier than ever. So I honestly, I feel like laughing whenever I see these articles that women are miserable. Men need to do something. Oh, men need to be fixed. Men need to this. Men need to that. I just gotta go, hey, wait a minute. Hold your horses there. Men aren't the ones that are miserable. Why would men have to change? I think this might be the first time in history that men as a whole, like there's always going to be a few Captain Save-A-Hos, but men as a whole have finally, they've conquered their urge to keep bailing Milady out of all of her self-inflicted problems. Now men are just kind of shrugging. Hey, we warned you. You didn't listen. So, hey, it's on you. Find a way to make it work.